I think a big thrust in my classroom is this fear of wealth and preoccupation with wealth that America has right now, and maybe always has. And I try to get students to think about how do you love yourself more than greed and all the crazy stuff that we see in social media. And I help them hone in that Dr. Cornel West talks about social justice is what love looks like in public, right? And in their projects, they are charged to marry the theoretical and the practical. And so they go into different communities that maybe they've never been before, and we talk about how to be humble and to step up at certain times and to step back at certain times, because that may not be your community. And you shouldn't be some white knight coming in there with this social justice theoretical knowledge of, I've learned about white supremacy and I'm going to tell you that you're doing it wrong. Hold on. You got to listen to what's going on. What are people interested in? What do they need? What do they value? And moving from this cultural competency, which is like the checklist of I have to be culturally competent, to cultural humility. Listen with your brain, your ears, your eyes, and your heart. And there's been amazing projects that have come out of that. For example, a student looked at the MBA program at a certain school and got a vibe of what people wanted to see in that MBA program, and then she started speaking their language and embedding the curriculum of the MBA program with diversity and social justice material. There was another program that a student wanted to look at infant mortality rates of black kids, and why were black babies dying why were black kids more likely to die than a white kid? Another one of my students was looking at community farming, and she noticed that a lot of the movement in America in terms of community-based farming was Eurocentric vegetables, fruits and vegetables. And she noticed that Central American communities were not having fruits and vegetables that were native to their diet. Therefore, they weren't eating whatever was growing in the community garden. And so she applied a critical race lens to community gardens, which one would think, well, that's just universal. Don't you like carrots? Don't you like cabbage? Well, maybe you need to put some yucca and some other vegetables and fruits in there, and that changed people's diets. And there's a kind of a ripple effect that happens when you start thinking about, oh, maybe I need to put myself in someone else's shoes, like maybe I need to start thinking in a different way, and that you could actually use the privilege and wealth that you are accumulating at, let's say, like a premier institution like UCLA or USC, that you can use that cultural capital, right, to quote Bordeaux, and you can affect larger change in society by sharing that cultural wealth. And I don't think we usually teach people what are you going to be like when you get power and when you get more wealth, and when you get there, are you going to share? In addition, I also work with a lot of students that are first-generation college-going students, and a lot of those folks are black and brown students or are usually children of immigrants. And I think that those elite spaces are not always very welcoming to students with those backgrounds. And so it causes a lot of psychological stress. So we talk about in the field racial battle fatigue is one, where you have to keep educating dominant identity folks, usually white folks, of, well, actually, I know you've seen this in the media about my culture, but this is how it is. And you have to keep explaining to people, actually that's racist, actually that's sexist, actually that's classist that you said that, and you get fatigued, right? And it can lead to burnout, and you're going to drop out of college or something like that. Some of the toxic environment stuff that occurs also is imposter syndrome, where it's like, oh my God, I'm an imposter. I'm not supposed to be here because I look around and no one else looks like me. And that could also lead to dropout or just terrible mental health issues in college. And then there's also like the stereotype threat, which is Claude Steele, it's a literature thing. You are not supposed to be here. Or women don't succeed in math, right? And you're in a math class and there's a stereotype threat. There's a threat that you are the stereotype and you are not going to succeed. So I try to equip my students with some almost medicine to fight some of these toxins that are around in elite college environments. And to whatever extent I can, I use myself as, I'm a male, I'm white, I'm privileged, but also I'm Jewish and second generation, and I learned from my father what it's like to be the child of immigrants and listen to his story about how he struggled in college and try to apply some of those messages to my students. But also, as we were talking about applying that cultural humility lens, that I don't know everything about your journey and your life, but I'm going to listen and I'm going to utilize the cultural capital that I have to share with my students. And I also try to get my students to understand and share with each other and create an environment in a classroom where I use like humor, I use social media, but also multimedia to connect with students on stuff that they're interested in. So, it's not this hyper elite space where you don't belong. I try to make a space where everyone feels welcome.